I'm just gonna say a little bit disappointed in. Oh, I need to switch which one I have so you can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, Genesis 20 through 23 for today. We're back in the Torah or the Law or the first 5 books, however you know it as, or the books of Moses. All of those work. We're looking at Abraham and Abimelech, and where we last left our hero Abraham. The visitors had come to him. He had showed hospitality to them. They said, Sarah will be pregnant and when we return a year from now. They went and visited Sodom and Gomorrah. They told him, hey, by the way, it's getting wiped out. And he negotiated with them from 50 all the way down to 10 righteous people. The town wouldn't be destroyed. There were not 10 righteous people. They show up there. Lot extended his hospitality to them. And then we had the fiasco with Lot's wife and Lot's daughters. And so now we're back to Abraham. But I just wanted to point out that Sarah has been told to be going to be pregnant. So is this immediately in the month that follows, the weeks that follows, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? Not sure. However, it's before the year when she's supposed to give birth. So that's where we're at. So Abraham and Abimelech. You know what? Let's look at what Abimelech means. I like that name. I remember it meant something, but I don't remember what it was. So let's just look at that before we get started. So Abimelech. Oh, there it is. Next verse. Okay. Melech is father, or my father is king. See, Melech is father. Yeah. Abimelech. So, king of Gera in Abraham's time, king of Goth in David's time, son of Gibeon, priest, son of Abiathar. So, yeah, I knew it was something like that. Yeah, so it is Melech is father, or my father is king. So I like Melech is king. That's the name for king. So, all right. So now we can jump into the text now that I've got my sidetrack. Well, at least the first one done. So beginning in chapter 20, and we've got 4 chapters. Now, Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar, and Abraham said of his wife Sarah, she is my sister. Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, you are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman. Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And didn't she also say, he is my brother? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands. Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die. Early the next morning, Abimelech summoned all his officials, and when he told them all that had happened, they were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said, what have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you have brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done. And Abimelech asked Abraham, what was your reason for doing this? Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say to me, he is my brother. Then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, my land is before you, live wherever you like. To Sarah he said, I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. Okay, I just get puzzled at stories like this, because he's already gone down to Egypt, I believe, when she was 65. Now I'd have to go back and look at the math again. But how good looking is Sarah? I mean, there's lots of people who have lots of questions in Scripture that they want to know the answer to. This is the one I want to know the answer to. How good looking is Sarah? That when she is beyond childbearing years, when she is, well, we'll see how old she is shortly when she gives birth, I think it tells us. So a year less than her giving birth to her son. She's so good looking that Abraham is still fearful that somebody is going to want her as a wife, that they'll be willing to kill him. So instead, he plays it off as she's his sister, and continually. Now, here's the thing. Technically, he's not lying. Technically, she's not lying. However, notice what he says. How could you allow this offense? What did I do to you? How have I wronged you? You brought such guilt upon me and my kingdom. Abraham knows what he's doing is wrong. He knows what he's doing is deceitful. He knows that the promise of a son is supposed to come through her. Why is he allowed this to happen? I'm just puzzled. And then again, I'm puzzled at why I do the same things over and over again that I do over and over again. And I go, why? I know better. Why? Why do I do this? Why can't I stop? What? So I'm just going to make the assumption this is Abraham's character flaw, for lack of a better word. And so he keeps falling into this pattern of doing this, which has never benefited him, always causes harm, always causes problems. And yet, look at how the king here says, Abimelech says, how could you have done this to us? Abimelech sees this as larger than himself only. This is the whole kingdom impacted by it. And so in order to make restitution, because God shows him to a dream, and he has a conversation with him and saying, my conscience is clear. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing of ill intent. I could not have known. There was no way for me to have done this. Thank you for stopping it before it happened. But he takes all of these steps, even to vindicate, the sacrifice, the sheep, the cattle, the male and female slaves, and 1,000 shekels. I mean, and then say, go anywhere you want in my land. I mean, he's just going overboard, doing everything he can to make sure that Abraham is blessed. But notice Abraham's fear is that there's no fear of God. Well, then Abraham, why not introduce it? Why not share it? Why? Anyway, so, but we do go back to the promise and curse of those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. So Abimelech is blessing Abraham, and we'll see what happens. Okay. Yeah, I thought the birth was coming next. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the very time God had promised. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore to him. he laughs. Oh, yeah, that's right, because Sarah laughed. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded. Remember, we read that not too long ago. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me, not at me. Notice that, with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah will nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Okay, it didn't give me the age there, but Abraham was, let's see, didn't it say it was 100? His old age, Isaac, 18. No, it didn't say that. Okay. Regardless, I still get puzzled by that. All right, the child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had bore to Abraham was mocking. And she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders, and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way, wandering in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And she sat there. She began to sob. Okay, just interesting before we get into what happens next. She fled before from Sarah's wrath and returned. And now she's fleeing again. And this time, Abraham sets her with stuff, but he didn't send her with much, and he didn't tell her where to go necessarily. He didn't send her someplace that, she could have had a blessing. Just feels like he could have given her more. He took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. Maybe he could have done more. I'm not guessing on how much. It just says a and some, and I don't know how much that is. However long it was, this could be days, it could be weeks. She had no clear direction. She wasn't sure where to go. She's wandering around, whatever that may be. But she gets to the point where she's like, he's going to die. I can't watch. So she sits down and she's sobbing. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. So God already promised Abraham this. So that's why I'm just wondering, did he share that with Hagar or not? We don't know. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer, which maybe is why they said a bow shot away earlier. Would be a reference that'd be common. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. That's interesting. So, connection with Egypt there. The treaty at Beersheba. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me and the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown to you. Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about the well of water that Abimelech's servant had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. Oh, you didn't tell me, and I only heard about it today. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe flock from the or lambs from the flock, and Abimelech said to Abraham, what is the meaning of the 7 ewes you have set apart by themselves? He replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. So this place was called Beersheba because the two men swore an oath there. So you got a footnote. Beersheba can mean well of 7 and well of the oath. Okay, so Beersheba. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. Interesting that there still is or continues to be, as we go along, references to trees here prominently in Scripture. When we were looking at Joshua, there was the by this tree and that tree when they were given descriptions of the land, which, okay, that may be the case, but those trees aren't going to be there forever. So, but trees were significant because here's this maybe is a good reason why. If there's a tree, it means there has to be a water source large enough to sustain the tree. So by planting a tree here, that's also something I learned recently in regards to wells. If you don't constantly take water from a well, the well will run dry because what it needs, like if a well will have like little capillaries, so to speak, that will trickle in and fill the water. So as you pull out water, it trickles in. If you take nothing out of the well, then those capillaries will have residue in there, the minerals or the dirt or whatever it's not flowing, it becomes stagnant and it will fill up those capillaries. Then when the water does evaporate or get used, it goes dry. So this may be another reason to have a tree there, because the tree would be pulling the water out of the well and then would also cause the well to continuously fill by having more water in it. So something I learned recently about wells may be a reason why often they're planted by a well. It also would be maybe that the tree, like I said, is just a significant thing that would be, look on the horizon, you can see the tree, you know in the desert here that there's a source of water because there's trees there. So several different connections possibly there. All right, but other than the treaty, not entirely just relevant to this passage. So some time later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Again, I will show you is the way that it's brought up. So I am going to go here to chapter 22. Just wanted to look up only solitary one, only unique one. That was the thing. Unique. There is a distinction of, so it's not, doesn't always mean one or always mean only. The aspect of unique is probably what's in mind here. If you're familiar with other translations, they'll say only begotten son. So anyway, just wanted to bring that out because people say, well, it's not the only son that Abraham has. It's the only son he has by Sarah. It's the only son of the promise. So therefore, that's the reference here. Your son, your only son. And it's also foreshadowing of Jesus, the only son. So go to Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain. I will show you. Now, one of the things that is detestable, I believe it says, is innocent bloodshed, sacrifices. There's a whole passage somewhere, I don't know off the top of my head, that I believe is referring to child sacrifice. Now, we'll get into this later, and we'll see that this is not entirely the same as child sacrifice. However, the gods in the land of Canaan did have child sacrifice as a prominent thing that they did. So here, what we have in some ways is a mockery of child sacrifice that's happening. Also, it does say that God is testing Abraham. So we've got a couple of parallels happening here. I just want to address why would God use this as a tool to sacrifice? Because he's also demeaning in this challenge or this test of Abraham. He's also demeaning the other gods. That's the part I wanted to get at, because the other gods, from the standpoint of Baal and Moloch, I think it's Moloch. That'd be over what we read through Joshua, where they would do child sacrifice. So you would have a burn or an altar that was there, and you would put the children on it when they were young, and they would essentially get burned to death, burned alive. They would sacrifice them while they're alive. So here you have a story of, sacrifice. This would be something that foreigners would know and understand. However, God intervenes in this story, and it doesn't go through to actual sacrifices, because that's not what God wants. He wants the heart of Abraham. He wants the mindset of Abraham. He wants the faith of Abraham. And so we'll see as we read through it that that's what's coming out. So this sounds like a horrible thing if God actually wanted him to do it. It sounds like a horrible thing to invite him to do it. However, there's more layers of it here than just God asking him to sacrifice. It's also a way of foreshadowing that the sacrifice here of Abraham's son would not have been enough. The only sacrifice of a son that is enough is Jesus. So the only, the unique that's a foreshadowing there that we see in this passage. Okay, enough aside, let's keep reading. So early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkeys. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abram looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go up there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Okay, so notice the demonstration of faith here. He does what is necessary. He gets all the wood to be able to make the sacrifice. He does travel to where he needs to go. He brings the servants along. However, now that it's time and we're close enough to do it, he leaves the servants behind. Why? Because they could interfere with this. They're going to not understand. They're going to not believe him. They're going to have doubts about it. He, however, says, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." He has faith that the 2 of them are going to return. Even though he is going to go through with what has been asked of him, he has faith that he'll be returning, and Isaac will be returning as well. So Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. Okay, I want to stop there for a minute. Okay, so we had a 3-day journey. That sounds a whole lot like 3 days in the tomb. The sacrifice of Jesus. We have the placing of the wood on Isaac to carry his own wood for the sacrifice. Jesus was going to carry his own cross, and would have had he been able to, until Simon the Cyrene comes in. So we have the one who's being sacrificed carrying the means of his own sacrifice. Yeah, lots of parallels here. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on. Wow. God himself will provide the lamb. Who is the lamb that God does provide himself? Jesus. So yeah, there's lots of parallels here. Lots of foreshadowing of the New Testament. But in this case, there's still the reality of Abraham's very own words. Wow. I'm going to jump ahead. We're not there yet. But if you know the 10 plagues, what's interesting in the last one is that the last plague is said that it will come from your mouth, what the plague will be. And Pharaoh says, I'm going to kill your oldest son, and that's the plague. Here, from Abraham's own mouth and belief, is that God will provide the burnt offering will provide the burnt offering, my son. What does God do? Listens to Abraham and actually does exactly what Abraham declared. That's fascinating. So, when they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Notice the same reply as earlier. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram. Many manuscripts. A ram behind him. Okay. Caught by its horn. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sands of the sea. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and throughout your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together from Beersheba, and Abraham stayed at Beersheba. This is going to highlight that. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. Repeating that phrase. So, but one thing here, we don't have Isaac's age. Yeah, there's a spot where, okay, good. Glad you're still here listening. There's a spot in here where we do know the age. Anyway, he's strong enough and old enough to carry the wood, which means he is old enough and strong enough to resist his father tying him up. The tying up of Abraham, the binding of Isaac by Abraham had to be by submission. It could not have been forced. It had to have been mutually agreed upon by Isaac to allow himself to be the sacrifice. And he had to have trusted his father in that process. And he also, I think, had to have believed the words his father had declared, that God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, even though he reaches there. He bound his son Isaac, laid him on the altar on top of the wood. He could fight him while he's getting bound. He could fight him while he's getting laid on the altar. He could fight him while he's laying on the altar. And there's all these things. He doesn't do any of those. So I just wanted to point that out, that he had the capacity to resist becoming the sacrifice and chose not to. He laid aside his own will to submit himself to the will of the Father. And that's also a demonstration of what Jesus does. So people don't always look at that or think of that, but it's there within the story, even if it's not spelled out. Okay. So that episode is done, and then we continue. Sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn, Buz, I'm not sure which way to pronounce those, his brother, Kemal, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jiblah, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. His concubine, whose name was Reumah, also had sons, Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. Okay, so foreshadowing again by, all of a sudden we find out information about the family back that he left, his brother Nahor. So, the death of Sarah. Is this our last chapter? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so we're in the last chapter. So, Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kereth Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites, who are the descendants of Heth. Oh, okay. He said, I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb to bury your dead. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites, and said to them, If you are willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Okay, I'm going to go look that up. Machpelah. First was that Machpelah. Yeah, 9. That's what I thought. Machpelah. Okay. Double or portion? But meaning is dubious according to, part, lot, portion, or epithet, double. Yeah. Okay. For some reason I was thinking there was something else there, and sometimes I am wrong in the name. There's probably something that it sounds like that maybe I remember. Anyway. Okay, so he's negotiating. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among his people, and he replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city. Okay, so at the city gates is where business was conducted. You would sit in the gates of the city and conduct business. So this would be where the elders, the heads of the city, would meet. So this isn't a weird thing. This is a natural thing that happens when we get into the book of book of Ruth. This is where Boaz goes. He goes to the city gate to negotiate these things. So No, my lord, he said, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing, listen to me. If you will, I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there. Okay, before we get to anybody giving a reason why, doesn't this seem like a strange kind of thing? Let me bury it in a place. I'll buy it. No, I'll just give it to you. No, I don't want you to give it to me. Let me pay the full price. Let's not negotiate. I'll pay the full price. Oh no, I want you to have it. I'll just give it to you. Not only the cave, I'll give you the whole field. Oh no, I'll pay for everything. What's going on here? I'm just asking the questions so we don't just accept because we maybe know the story, but ask questions before we get to what's happening. So accept it from me so I can bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. So Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it and all the trees within the border of the field was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. Okay, this may be a piece of foreshadowing, but Abraham wants a deed. One of the things when the Israelites go into exile, I'm going to forget if it's Isaiah or Jeremiah. I think it's Jeremiah. Jeremiah buys a property, gets the deed, even though he's saying we're all going into exile. Why does he do that? Because the deed holds who owns the property, who is the rightful owner. Abraham is after the deed. Now, if somebody in the future comes and sees that, oh, it was deeded and you paid nothing for it, now they can argue about you should have paid and they'll want payment, or you don't have a right to it, you didn't pay for it. Here, it's witnessed to, it's a legal document, it's sold to him, he's purchased it, he has the purchase price, and he has the deed to show it. So in the future, whenever, because he's not living here. Remember, he's not living in all of these places where he gets land and stuff. He needs deeds to them. So while he's not there, he can later, when he returns and or his descendants returns, he's able to show that a deed of property duly and rightfully executed took place. And so that's part of, I think, what he's doing here. And again, as I said, there's I think, foreshadowing of why deeds are going to be important before they go into exile. So, all right. So that's it for Genesis today. Let's